Welcome back. In this video, I will look at the Ottoman Empire in the period following Suleiman's death from the 1560s to 1700, the end of the Great Turkish War. Previously, this period has been described as one of stagnation and decline, but more recently, historians reject this idea, emphasizing that the Ottomans were able to adapt and implement various reforms, which enabled their empire to not just survive, but remain a major power. After a few years of palace intrigue and fraternal dispute, Suleiman the Magnificent was followed by Selim II in 1566, but he was mostly inactive, so Sokolu Mehmed Pasha ran the empire instead, fighting wars from Yemen to Russia. Cyprus was conquered, but the Battle of Lepanto was famously lost against Christian navies, and replacing the experienced sailors was very difficult. Tunis was recaptured from the Spanish. A long and devastating war against Iran was fought in the next decade under Murad III with temporary gains, while the imperial women of this period gained significant power. The harem rose in importance. The Sultan's mother, the Walid Sultan, emerged as a center of power, along with the Shaykh al-Islam, the chief of the Islamic religious hierarchy. They were able to remove and enthrone sultans who were no longer looked upon as the sole leaders of the empire. The ever-expanding army also became a political force. The Janissaries protested or mutinied whenever they were not satisfied with imperial policy, slowly transforming from an elite fighting force into a hybrid organization that had both military and political objectives. The empire spent over 60% of all expenses on the military, and while the army was able to modernize, using new firearms, battlefield tactics, and better logistics, the navy gradually declined, although it was still able to prevent a total collapse and acquire modern ships even at the end of this period. The Long Turkish War broke out in Hungary in 1593, in which the Habsburgs were joined by Transylvania, Wallachia, and Moldavia, with the aim of pushing the Turks out of Hungary and possibly the Balkans. This didn't happen. Both sides captured significant forts, and while Vienna was never threatened, the Christians did not even try to take Buda, the former Hungarian capital. The war turned into a stalemate. The only result was that central Hungary was devastated. Its population either fled or was wiped out. After much bloodshed, a peace treaty was signed at Zsitvatorok in 1606, which maintained the status quo. However, a war with Safavid Iran continued until 1618, reversing all previous gains. Mehmed III had died before the conclusion of these two wars in 1603. His sons did not yet come to age. Ahmed I became the next sultan as a minor, and from that moment, princes were no longer sent to different provinces in Anatolia to govern. This prevented another fratricidal civil war, and also ended the practice of royal fratricide, which had previously claimed the lives of dozens of infants and young boys. The entire imperial family remained in Constantinople, where the Sultan's brothers lived in the harem. The general principle of succession was seniority, so the oldest living male relative could inherit the throne upon the Sultan's death, which also made the Sultans less important, even replaceable. By this time, the old Timar system had begun its decline. The original cavalry of the imperial army consisted largely of Sipahis, who were responsible for their own expenses. To cover those expenses, they were given land in the conquered territories. However, wars with the Habsburgs and the Safavids required a large standing army, and modern firearms became cheaper than horses, so Sipahis were now obsolete. Much of the Timar revenue was brought into the central treasury, and as Timar holders died off, their lands were not reassigned, but also brought under imperial domain and sold to the highest bidder for the life of the buyer. The centralized fiscal system required a much larger bureaucracy with high standards. This body moved out of the Topkapi Palace, becoming independent from the Sultan. The population boom in the 16th century resulted in demographic issues. Banditry became a major problem in Anatolia right when the empire was fighting both the Habsburgs and the Safavids. These former farmers, who turned into banditry due to economic problems and rising inflation, were gradually incorporated into the imperial army as mercenaries. Some of their leaders were granted positions in provincial administration. In 1609, the remaining Selalis were wiped out, diminishing their role. At the same time, the wartime tax was made permanent, greatly increasing government revenue. In the religious sphere, the conservative Kadizadeli movement gained influence, opposing innovation in religious matters like Sufism. Twice they gained official support from the imperial government, but they were looked down by many scholars and intellectuals, and after the siege of Vienna in 1683, no such support was provided. Newly available consumer goods like coffee and tobacco were viewed with ambivalence. They were sometimes banned, sometimes permitted. More scholars from Iran and Kurdistan immigrated to the Ottoman Empire. Their descendants emphasized verification of previous scientific discoveries, breathing new life into logic and dialectics. Ahmed I was followed by his younger brother, Mustafa I, but he turned out to be mentally unstable, so Ahmed's son, Osman II, was enthroned soon afterwards. He attempted to restore the authority of the Sultan, which both the religious establishment and the army opposed. After his failed Polish campaign, he tried to recruit a new army in Anatolia, but he was executed. The old patrimonial empire was now fully converted into one in which power was shared between different groups. Mustafa I again became Sultan, but he was soon replaced with Ahmed's younger son, Murad IV, who was still a child. The Safavids sensed weakness. In 1624 they attacked and took Baghdad, but after these events a major revolt was suppressed. Murad implemented military and moral reforms and regained Baghdad in 1638. He died 2 years later at the age of 29. He was succeeded by his brother Ibrahim, who was also mentally unstable, so he left governing to his grand viziers. A war with Venice broke out. The Ottomans quickly took most of Crete, but the Dardanelles were blockaded by the Venetian navy. Ibrahim was deposed in a move which was sanctioned by both the Janissaries and his own mother, Kösem Sultan. He was succeeded by his 7-year-old son, Mehmed IV. Palace intrigue continued. Kösem then tried to poison the new sultan, her own grandson, but Mehmed's mother, Turhan Sultan, relying on her own allies, assassinated Kösem in 1651. 5 years later, another revolt claimed the lives of many officials. A new blockade was established by Venice, but then the experienced Köprülü Mehmed Pasha was appointed as Grand Vizier, and he took matters in his own hands. He implemented radical reforms, executed thousands of unreliable soldiers, reconquered lost islands, and led a campaign to Transylvania, crippling the principality's economic and military power. A revolt broke out against him in the eastern provinces, but Mehmed IV sided with him, and the Köprülü family would maintain its grip on power for the next 2 decades. During this period, the conquest of Crete was completed, some territory was taken from Poland, but stability ended when another war was launched, and the siege of Vienna ended in disaster in 1683. In subsequent years, the Holy League was formed. It retook much of Hungary. The Ottomans were defeated in the Second Battle of Mohács and in the Battle of Zenta, although total Habsburg victory was prevented by another European war with France. Niš and Belgrade were retaken, but after Zenta, the Ottomans sued for peace, in which most of Hungary was given to the Habsburgs, along with Transylvania, in the 1699 Treaty of Karlovac. Morea was taken by Venice, Podolia was given back to Poland-Lithuania, only the Banat region remained in Ottoman hands. This marked the end of Ottoman expansion. The last warrior sultan, Mustafa II, was followed by more peaceful successors. A bureaucratic empire was established, but significant fiscal reform again increased taxes and prevented a financial collapse. This concludes my summary of 17th century Ottoman developments. In the next episode, I'll talk more about the Sultanate of Women and the Köprülü era before I move on to the 18th and 19th centuries. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.